Welcome back to the Green Rush Live. I'm Doug Miller with my co-host Josh Kincaid, and we have a special guest for this half hour. His name is Jay Fagerstrom, and he is from VRX Labs. Jay, thank you very much for taking this Friday afternoon to join us. And please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about VRX Labs.
So VRX Labs is a cannabis compliant lab in California, Long Beach specifically. We've been in business a couple of years. It's a full compliant lab, full testing. And just now we're going through our ISO recertification this next week, and we are hitting the market again. We understand that there's a lot of opportunity. We are from the industry, working in the industry. We are not corporate people, and we are looking to get back to the grassroots, raise the level of optimism in compliant cannabis, and move on.
Approximately how many products do you sample or get into sample per day?
On average, we're looking at 10 to 20 samples per day. And we run about 25 days a month.
Okay.
And are you in California? Is that right?
Yes, sir. Long Beach, California.
And how far out do those products come from?
We are generally within about a 50-mile radius. Mostly we service the industry within about 25 miles. We have enough compliant cannabis in that area to suffice us.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And we have our other guest, Sam, just joined us from Point Labs. Sam, welcome to the show. And that's Jay.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, our pleasure, our pleasure. Tell us a little bit about On Point Labs, and then we'll continue back with Jay, and we'll have a great conversation about labs.
Absolutely, yeah. So On Point Labs is a 10,000 square foot facility in a place called Snowflake, Arizona. We're about 3.5 hours north and east of where Super Bowl 57 was robbed from the Philadelphia Eagles just this last weekend. So, but yeah, that's where we're at. And we're there because that's where a lot of the agricultural center of the state is, particularly in terms of cannabis, but for a variety of different products as well.
So Jay, getting back to you, what are some of the issues that you see coming in with the products that you're testing? Is it mold? Is it heavy metals? What are the main issues?
Depending on the products, the flower is mostly been the mold. In the and some shopping, not really a bunch right now. I mean, a lot of the market in California has gotten on top of this. Their R&D is in front of a lot of the testing before compliance, and they're meeting the standards before they're even putting it in the COA. It's not a guessing game.
How about you, Sam? What are some of the issues you see on the flower and other products?
You know, I think there are quite a few issues, but I think since we're all lab folks on this call, I can maybe say with some level of safety that maybe a lack of honesty from the producers in terms of where they may be failing and where they may be seeking help. Because I think one of the things, and this isn't about the producers or the qualities that they necessarily have themselves, but, you know, we have a team of 50 folks up there, and, you know, 2 of them have PhDs, many of them have advanced chemistry degrees, most of them have experience in controlled environment agriculture. You know, like, we can be a resource, but in so many of the markets that we operate, we're only seen as compliance. And I think that that's a real limiting thing. So I kind of went global with your question there, but I think that that's one of the issues that I see is not necessarily with product quality, but really just like a lack of trust that we can be more than just this provider of a checked box before you go sell your product.
All right, fellas, I'm taking a mental survey here. Keep a note. I like Doug's question about what cultivars or strains are you seeing the most infection and the most resilient? Go ahead, Jay. Do you have any strains that you're seeing consistently, like you're not seeing anything from, and then another strain?
I wouldn't be able to answer that question, be frank with you, because I'm not seeing that kind of overview on strains. I wouldn't know where to start. I'd just be guessing. We have a consistency on that. We're not compare and contrast like that in our lab. I wouldn't know how to answer that.
Fair enough. Yeah, Sam, are you seeing anything?
Oh,
you're muted, Sam.
Sorry. Yes, I am. I just had technical difficulties getting off of mute there. Sorry. Yeah, and this isn't, we haven't yet done, an elongated study on this or anything, but just recently with the customer, we were trying to look at some of the trend lines that we saw in some aspergillus results. And what we realized was there were a lot of derivatives of grape strains that were really having some issues, right? So if there was, a grape pie or, those types of cultivars were really having some trouble. And I don't know if it was that cultivar, just for this producer, or if maybe there's some genetic reality with, the original crosses that came from that kind of down the line. But that was kind of a hot hub that just is top of mind right there, Josh. Thank you.
What kind of issues were you seeing with that product?
Oh, we were looking specifically at aspergillus and mold. So I'm sorry, Jay, that I don't know all of the markets that you're in, but we focus in Arizona, and in the Arizona regulated market, we have a zero tolerance. So if there's any detection, it's a failed sample. So we have quite a few customers that are really kind of geared into seeing what trends they can find, whether it's a particular room, maybe a side of a building. And maybe one thing I should say that is natural for me, but might not be for other folks across the country. About 95% of the flower that we see in the market is grown either indoor or in a heavily controlled greenhouse. We have very little outdoor flower in Arizona. So so when we're talking about the cultivars, it isn't just the cultivar, but perhaps the environment in which it's also cultivated. And we see some different trends in that work as well.
That's due to the heat, Sam. Is that not necessarily a preference in growing techniques, but a requirement due to the area?
Yes, yeah, I would say that, even in the areas that aren't extreme, it still can get in the, mid to high 90s as a daytime temperature, right in, that kind of beautiful season for outdoor growing. So I should say you can definitely grow cannabis, right? But it isn't necessarily ones that consumers might want to see on a shelf and pay $70 an eighth for.
Yeah. I want to ask a question about legalization. Maybe Doug can ring me in back after that, but wondering how you guys are looking at labs as a regulatory approach. You've got Biden wanting to do some research and see if, patent 6630507 exists and what research Nixon did 40 years ago, whatever, I'm just curious if you guys are seeing lab testing as to support that scientific research and some potential implications on what medical and therapeutic applications could be to speed that up. Jay, do you want to go first?
No, sir. Once again, I have to apologize that I'm not in a position to answer that. What we're seeing a lot of I'm on the business side of it, and on the science part, we're seeing R&D to pre-test the material before they go into their compliant testing. But we're in a controlled environment that's been running since just past 96 legally. So they've worked out a lot of the issues as far as that is. So as far as the science and trying to expand on the information and the research we have, we're not getting that at all here.
Outside of just consumer safety and general practices, you talked about ISO and that kind of general normalization and certification process, and just kind of giving them peace of mind, I guess.
Yes, and the state requires that, and it gives us it helps our accreditation on that. We're fighting a lot of the lab shopping and what have you, and being from the industry, we came from the grower side. and ended up in a lab. And ironically, we're allowing the science to speak for itself. And we're the bridge between the people that are coming in that we're having a hard communication with the scientists. And so we can talk to the scientists and then go back to our clients. And that's kind of the bridge that we are now. And that's what we're seeing the trend is for us, is there the communication between the labs and the producers was, it set the table for a lot of oddness in the shopping and the communication between the labs and the cultivators, the manufacturers.
You
And
see
I think
that
that,
too, Sam?
yeah. To piggyback on that, I mean, I think that one of the things that we see here in Arizona that's similar to Jay's experience is that we weren't set up to have that science forward mentality or the science forward ability. And by we, I mean compliance testing generally in the cannabis space, right? Like we were just a part of the Frankenstein of the rulemaking, world, where like, hey, you know what's a real priority? Let's make sure that we stop sending people to prison for this. Okay, then we should probably figure out some licensing strategy. And oh crap, we got to figure out how to make sure that consumers are safe. So really, in the grand scheme of things, while we are labs, and while I am proud to say that we're a biomedical research facility, every time I get to choose an industry, on LinkedIn or whatnot, I mean, the reality is that we are a stop along the production schedule for a producer, whether it's a cultivator or a manufacturer. We are a box to check. And whether or not my colleagues across the lab space embrace that or acknowledge that or understand that is usually some type of indication of how successful they are in a market, right? You can be a PhD microbiologist and have, peer-reviewed journal papers in a variety of different publications, but it doesn't mean that TerraSend wants to test their, newest crop with you, or, that kind of thing, right? So I think your question is a really good one, Josh, but the frustration for a lot of us in the lab space is we weren't given the ability to focus on the things that science should allow us to focus on. We are the equivalent of a dry cleaner. You can't go and present your case in front of the judge unless your suit's clean, and you can't bring your product to, the Cure Leaf store or the True Leaf store, the Zen Leaf store, unless you have the COA in hand. So we are just a byproduct in many ways of the regulatory regimes that we're a part of.
No, I think that's just a brilliant response. It's so true, just how everyone's thrown in the mix without any kind of SOPs to begin with. You had to create it. You had to figure it out. You had to spend the money on trial and error. And there wasn't any kind of foresight to say, maybe we should extract some of this and look at it from a bigger, fundamental level. So I just think the reality of it is so raw and real that it was just perfect.
So Jay,
Perfect storm for sure.
Yeah.
no, I was going to ask Jay, in California, you were kind of saying about the COA. Are a lot of the growers and everybody testing their product before they even take it to the labs to get tested, like for their final? Are they doing COAs prior to getting their final
Larger
COAs?
brands they're doing the research and development and working on that, because we're constantly making a better product. And if we can get the yields larger, they can get the yields larger. They're meeting the standards. They have a consistent product. I mean, the thing they're battling is consistency. And then once they get it down, the environment changes, something changes, or the regulations change, and they have to be able to meet that. And so getting in front of it with the research and design, knowing that they're going to pass the COAs, means that they don't tie their commodities up with the state.
It's an interesting point. I mean, it's the regulations are just so crazy. It's here we're talking about testing and safety for people that use cannabis, and yet everybody has to like run around different circles to get around everything. And it's like, is it really like, are we really doing the right thing? Like, do you guys honestly think that we're testing for the right reasons and for the right things? I mean, I know toxins and the heavy metals and that sort of thing. Do you think we should be testing for other things as well, like other hazardous materials? And what do you feel about the testing industry?
Yeah, so I mean, I think, you asked two questions there that sounded like they were the same, but they actually have an important distinction in that, are we testing for the right reasons? I think yes, right? We want to make sure that as the consumer, you can have a general and a base level of expectation that what you see as part of the label claim is actually what you see, in on the shelf. But if we're testing, the question is, are we testing for the right things? I think that is an entirely different set of answers, largely because, necessity is the mother of invention, right? It's like everyone knows that, right? But right now, even, for trim, you can get a pound on the wholesale market here in Arizona for about maybe, $250 to $300 for a pound of trim of regulated cannabis. Hemp you can get for, maybe a couple of bucks, like maybe just the change I can find in my couch. And scientists and armchair chemists, if you will, are figuring out that if you have the right mix of battery acid and AC refrigerant and under the right heat and temperature, you can actually synthesize the minuscule amounts of delta 8 or delta 9 in a hemp crop to actually turn it into a passable distillate. And that is actually crashing the market from a price comparison standpoint. But what we're not talking about is, because of the way that those processes are rapidly developing and reverting to things that we've outlawed in other industries decades ago, we aren't testing for those things anymore. I don't have R134A on my list of solvents that I have to test for. So someone can literally use the Freon that you have in any one of your cars to, synthesize hemp into something that you're going to be seeing in a cartridge or in a package on the shelf of a dispensary. And every analyte that we test for says that it's safe, but we don't tell you that there's vitamin E acetate in it or not, R134A, any number of these things, right? So I don't usually make a habit of quoting Donald Rumsfeld, but when he talks about the known unknowns or the unknown unknowns, like that's what we're dealing with here. And I think that, in other industries, such as like, the pharmaceutical industry, you don't have to give your secret sauce, but you not only have to test your final product, but you also have to test your byproduct and make sure that both are safe and as a part of your finished pharmaceutical grade. So, we have stuff that's coming out looking like antifreeze, and in best case scenario, clean antifreeze, not used antifreeze, right? But either one, I don't want to see as a part of something that I'm putting into my lungs one way or the other, right? And that's just my lungs. Some people are using that distillate for edibles, right? So, and we see these stories even with well-regulated industries like the candy industry that are finding dangerous levels of lead and cadmium and other, places in like high quality gourmet chocolates. What aren't we seeing because we're not testing for them? And I think that those questions really are never going to happen until the federal government sees us as an industry worthy of that level of respect. And I think that's like, those are all tied together for me. And as you can tell, I can go on and on about this. So I'm going to take a pause here and see if I'm on track or not.
No, I love the passion, Sam. You're clearly passionate about what you do, and I love it. And Jay, how do you feel about that in the whole industry and the testing?
Well, prior to testing, more unicorns have died than people smoking marijuana. So once we got regulated, then the testing and people were harmed. For the most part, people that produce marijuana took pride in it and they didn't want to hurt people. It was something they were sharing. We've lost that with the commercial thing. So we have to have the regulation. We have to have the testing. We have to have the knowledge. But the way that the table has been set in California is that the regulations supersede reality, whereas we want to put a safe product out. People growing it and manufacturing want to put a safe product out. We want to be able to be competitive financially. But between the regulations and the people not having the microbiologists get involved and say, hey, this is what's happening. This is how we need to consistently change. We need to hear back from the labs. We need to hear back from the outside producers. It's going to consistently change. It's a pioneering business, so we have to flex with it. But there's a lot of flaws in it, and it's being run by people that took a job, didn't necessarily want the job. It's matured a little bit, but we're still, brand new, trying to find people that want to be in this industry. And as you said, until the feds get involved, we're just seen as the stepbrother. It doesn't really have, any teeth.
Do you guys have any advice or final words on what consumers can do or how consumers can use testing to make more informed decisions on certain products?
Yeah, I mean, I think my first thing, and I know that I'm by far the first person to bring this up, but I'm proud of my training and my certification as a Gangier. It's a great program out of Northern California, kind of connection to what matters in terms of the analysis of high quality craft cannabis. And I think that consumers should always ask for the terpene profile testing. Potency is not any realistic gauge of quality. I tend to drink a lot less nowadays, but I never went to a bar and said, "Give me your highest potent, liquor." And just take a shot of Everclear just to get wildly drunk out of my mind, right? Like you want that journey, you want that symphonic expression of what the whole plant has to offer. So, and maybe I'm speaking just from an Arizona focused perspective, but most of our consumers, when they hear testing, what they're asking for is the potency. And I think that if we can divorce those two things, we'd go a really, really long way. I mean, some of my favorite cultivars routinely hit in the 15 to 17% THC range, but they're at that 4.5 to 5.5 terps, and they're just like, knocks you back on your ass. Like those kinds of things are what consumers should be. If I can be normative in my response here, that should be what matters. And I understand that some people pick up a bottle of $2 Chuck because it's what's affordable and it gets the job done. But having a really, really nice, properly aged Nebbiolo from the right region and the right vintage, that matters, right? So how are we going to get to that level with cannabis? And you start by asking for the terpenes, not for the potency.
I agree 100%. Do you guys think that some of the labs are falsifying the potency tests just because of obviously if they're higher potencies, you can sell more product, and if you can give a grower or producer higher potencies all the time, they're going to generally do better just because of what you're saying. Most consumers go in and ask for the highest THC percentage, which obviously isn't the correct thing to do.
I don't disagree at all, Doug. And I think that, I'm not trying to bring a religion or spirituality to it, but I think, there's this line that always sticks for me from Modest Yahoo, right? But a real like long-standing ancient Hasidic truth that the handle of the axe comes from the forest itself, right? So whether or not labs are falsifying potency numbers, I think the real question is, why? Right? Like the producers are very aggressive, and they're aggressive because the consumer is aggressive, right? So we live in this really kind of toxic cycle that is potency first and potency only in some really damaging ways. So I don't know who stands up and puts a stop to it, but I think that the reason why labs have been at the center of it is they're the one producing the results. But there's been one case recently from a producer out of California that's in some other markets as well that got nabbed as the producer seeking those high numbers. And I think that may be the first of quite a few of those types of subtle shifts on the conversation, but a really important one, right? Like, we're a cog in the wheel, to one of the points that I was sharing earlier, right? So we only exist because our customers do. So, you know, the question really is who is falsifying what, I think is maybe one question that I would throw back out there.
No, that's a great explanation. I really appreciate it. I appreciate both your times, Jay Fagerstrom from VRX Labs and Sam Richard. I didn't even get your last name before. And from On Point Labs, you guys were both actually on point today. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Thank you for enlightening our viewers about testing and the process. And you gave a lot of, I thought, educational information, and I really appreciate it. Josh, you have anything to end with?
I don't. No.
All right. Well, I'm gonna wrap this part up because I think that was great, and we're gonna go ahead, take a break. We'll be back. Everybody enjoy your little smoke break, and we'll see you for the last half hour. Again, Jay, Sam, thank you so much. We appreciate it,
Yeah.
and we'll see you soon.
With that, we're going to roll this one up. I'm Josh Kincaid. This is The Talking Hedge. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't, and I'm out. Don't forget to smash that like button on your way out and check out these other videos that we've got.